Hi, I'm Ken from Orion Telescopes and Binoculars, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up the Orion Observer 80ST. We'll start from all the parts and pieces that you find in the box laid out to make sure you've got everything, and then go all the way through the full setup that you see here. All right, well, let's get started. All right, when you first take the telescope out of the box, you're going to find lots of little pieces that need assembly, and just verify you've got them all here. I'll just quickly go through them. First, obviously, the tube here on top. This is the equatorial head and the hub that goes between the tripod legs to attach the legs to the top. A little latitude adjustment screw, the accessory tray that goes between the legs of the tripod. Here's the three legs. Counterweight and counterweight shaft. Various little hardware for attaching all of these items together. On the side here, these are the accessories, the slow motion control knobs, your finder scope, the diagonal, and then your two eyepieces, the 25 and the 10mm eyepiece. So let's start the assembly process and get this thing put together. The first step is to attach the leg lock to each of the legs so the legs don't move up and down on you. Pull out the feet a little bit so the center leg is somewhere in between. You don't want it all the way recessed up in there. I'm just going to pull it out about a couple inches. And then grab one of the leg locks and thread it into the socket on the side. So you're going to repeat that for all three legs. Next is the tripod hub. Each leg attaches to one of these little protrusions in the hub using these long screw and wing nuts. The first thing to do is to look at each leg and make sure it's the right direction. The tripod accessory tray bracket has to be on the inside of the legs, not on the outside, because that's where the tripod accessory tray is, in the middle. Then you also want to look on the top of each leg. One side, the hole is a hex head shape to fit the hex head bolt. The other side is a round circle. So the first thing you'll want to do is take off the wing nut from the long screws, and then making sure the bracket's on the inside. Slip the hub between the holes and thread the bolt through the hex head shaped side, because it's going to recess inside that little hex head. And then thread it through both sides. So when I get it done, it's going to disappear into the hole just like that. And on the other side, I put the washer back on and then the wing nut. And then just repeat that for the other two legs. All right, now that you've got the tripod attached to the hub, it's time to put on the central accessory tray in between the legs. So stand the tripod up. Now there's nothing preventing the tripod from opening all the way up and collapsing on you, so just be careful with it. Put it at some angle here so it's going to stand up on you, for you. And then the tray attaches to each of these little flanges on the side using these tiny wing nut and screws. So take the wing nut off each screw. Be careful, there's two little washers there, and they can disappear on you if you drop them. Take one washer off, because one washer is going to go on top and the other is going to go on the bottom. And the screw goes through the hole in the accessory tray, through the top of the flange, and then another washer below it, and then the wing nut. That gets threaded onto the bottom. And then just repeat that for each of the other two legs. All right, for this next step, I've raised the tripod legs up since we didn't have a table and my knees were killing me. So just loosen the leg locks, slide the legs up, tighten them back down, and now I've got this thing at its a higher point. The next step is to attach the equatorial head onto the top of the hub that you previously installed. Just take off the large thumb knob here with this big washer on it. Unthread that all the way out. And then this little flange sits inside the top of the hub. And then reinstall this from underneath. And just do it hand tight, and you're done. All right, the next step is to attach the latitude adjustment bolt to the equatorial head. So this thing, is, when it's aligned, will stay at your local latitude. Around here we're at 37 degrees north latitude. So just take the bolt. It goes through this hole here on the side of the equatorial mount. I'm going to loosen this large knob. That allows me to rotate the head up and down in latitude. Bolt goes in through the large hole and thread it all the way in until it butts up against the head, and you'll start to feel it. The further in I screw it, the higher this thing rests when it comes to the furthest downward motion here. And just look at the scale here and then screw this in until this is raised up to your local latitude. So, like I said, here in the San Francisco, San Jose Bay Area, we're at 37 degrees. 30, 40, a little high right there, right about there. And then don't forget to lock this back down because that locks the latitude height in place. Next, you're going to take the counterweight and the counterweight shaft and install them onto the head, and they go down into this little threaded hole on the bottom of this little flange section here. So what I like to do is take the counterweight, loosen the counterweight lock knob until when you look down the hole, there's no screw coming out into the opening. Then take your shaft and slide it through, and then while holding onto the counterweight, just thread the shaft into the mount all the way up until it's tight, and then you can lock the counterweight down. Now, since I don't have a telescope on this side, I don't want to like really make it out of balance, so I'm just going to lock the counterweight for the moment down up near the top of the mount. Next are the slow motion control knobs. They will attach on to the declination axis and the right ascension axis using these two little shafts that come out. There's a little set screw on each, which you'll back out until looking down the hole of the slow motion knob, you see that they aren't coming into the opening. Loosen it up. And then on the slow motion shaft itself, there you'll find a little flat on the side. Well, that flat is where the screw is going to connect and clamp down. It's a better connection when it's on something flat versus on the round section of the clamp. They come in two different lengths. It's really personal preference which you like, so just experiment with it. But I'll put the short one here and lock down the screw. And I'll put the long one over on this side. It's a little hard to see from your end, but it's the same style shaft. And lock it down. And what that does is when the locks of the telescope are engaged, you can use the slow motion knob to fine-tune the position of the telescope. When you want to manually move the scope around, you can unlock these two axes here and move it by hand. Lock it down, slow motion knobs take over. The next step is to attach the telescope to the mount, and that uses these little studs, threaded studs, and the wing nuts. So take the wing nuts off, and be careful, underneath the wing nuts are two small washers that can get away from you if you drop them. Each shaft has two washers, so just take one of the washers off of each shaft, leaving one washer on each because you've got a washer on the top and a washer on the bottom. So I'll just hold the two washers so they don't fall off when I tip it this way, and slide it through the two holes. And then you're going to take a washer on each shaft and a wing nut to lock it in place. Just repeat with the other shaft. And hand tight is all you need to do. Now the next step is the finder scope. It uses the little foot here and it slides into the shoe on the side. Just slide it in from the back end and you'll feel it kind of click into place just like so. The diagonal is next. It slips into the front of the focuser. So loosen the two set screws on the side, take out the cap, and the diagonal slides into place. Now I have to back out the little set screws because you don't want them pushing into the inside hole, otherwise the diagonal won't slip into place. Same with the eyepieces up top. Let me tell you one little tip here. You get it in, you tighten it down with the two set screws. If you want to remove an eyepiece or remove the diagonal, you don't unscrew it because the diagonal and your eyepieces, they use these chrome barrels and they can unscrew for assembly at the factory, but that's not meant to come apart in normal use. So you never unscrew the eyepiece or the diagonal. It's a slip fit. It slips in and it tightens down with this little set screw that pinches the collar and it just slips in and out. You don't go unscrewing anything because you might lose pieces inside the telescope if you do. The next step is the eyepiece, and same thing. This is a barrel. It can be unscrewed, but leave it in place. Loosen the set screw on the side of the diagonal, slip the eyepiece straight in, and then tighten down the little set screw. It pinches it from the side and holds it in place. When you want to remove it, you just loosen it, slide it out, and then say, here's your high power eyepiece, the 10. It slips into place. Now, during the assembly phase, remember I told you to slide the counterweight up towards the top since there wasn't a telescope on it. Well, now that you've got the telescope on, you need to balance the setup so there's no undue stress on the gears. So the way you do that is hold on to the tube, unlock the two axes, and then move the telescope over to the side. I'm just going to pretend I put it down here just to show you what something out of balance looks like. So you bring it and you hold on to the telescope because you don't know where the balance point is going to be. With the axes locked, bring it over to the side and then just gently let go for a second. Now you can see that it's very counterweight heavy. The counterweight falls down, the telescope floats up. That means there's too much weight on the counterweight side and not enough weight on the telescope side. So just slide the counterweight shaft, or the counterweight up the shaft, some amount, and then let go and see what happens. Well, see, I went too far. Now the counterweight's too light. So I'll go about halfway back. How's that? There we go. See, I can move it in both directions. It's unlocked and it stays where it stays put. It doesn't move on its own. So I've got the balance nice and perfect. This telescope also comes with a Moon Map 260, which is a handy guide for observing and identifying craters on the moon. You get your image of the moon in the middle with all the craters, and then they're all labeled so the list of everything is off to the sides. And my favorite part of this is you got two moon surfaces. You've got the correct image map, which actually would be best for a Newtonian reflector. And then on the back side, you've got the mirror image map, which is good for a refractor or a Cassegrain using a standard star diagonal. So this is the map you'd be using with this particular telescope. All right, well, there you have it. That was the setup for the Orion Observer 80ST. You are now ready to start observing the night sky and seeing things like the rings of Saturn, moons of Jupiter, the Andromeda Galaxy, the Orion Nebula, all sorts of fun things in the sky. So enjoy your telescope. Clear skies. Hi, I'm Ken from Orion Telescopes and Binoculars, and in this video I'm going to show you how to set up the Orion Observer 80ST. We'll start from all the parts and pieces that you find in the box laid out to make sure you've got everything, and then go all the way through the full setup that you see here. All right, well, let's get started. All right, when you first take the telescope out of the box, you're going to find lots of little pieces that need assembly, and just verify you've got them all here. I'll just quickly go through them. First, obviously, the tube here on top. This is the equatorial head and the hub that goes between the tripod legs to attach the legs to the top. A little latitude adjustment screw, the accessory tray that goes between the legs of the tripod. Here's the three legs. Counterweight and counterweight shaft. Various little hardware for attaching all of these items together. On the side here, these are the accessories, the slow motion control knobs, your finder scope, the diagonal, and then your two eyepieces, the 25 and the 10mm eyepiece. So let's start the assembly process and get this thing put together. The first step is to attach the